Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier, and thank you for coming by, and I hope the week's gone well. The weekend looks promising. Obviously, so much going on in the financial markets. I'm going to take you back, my macro thoughts, to something I put out there even before the 12th of January when I said the euro-dollar exchange rate is headed to parity and even lower in 2015. And we're seeing it unravel at speed right now. Home thoughts, back to Pablo Neruda. Laughter is the language of the soul, isn't it? I like this as well. I got lost in the night without the light of your eyelids. And when the night surrounded me, I was born again. I was the owner of my own darkness. And this is probably my favorite. I hunger for your sleek laugh and your hands the color of a furious harvest. I want to eat the sunbeams flaring in your beauty. I was thinking of Mombasa actually, so I'll put up the photograph I took when I visited the marina, Mr. Kanji's marina, and I took a photo of the island from the mainland. And I'm going to put up a photograph of a leopard in a tree in the Samburu, and I'm trying to cajole my Hannah to join me for a visit to the Samburu, preferably during the full moon. I'll put up a photograph of elephants crossing the Owasso-Nero River, which was the last time we visited the Samburu. It must have been about 6:30 in the morning. We saw this sort of classic sight of elephants. Political reflections, well, King Abdullah, who was old, and 90 I think, passed away. I'll put up a photograph of him with John Kerry, and he's going to be succeeded by Crown Prince Salman bin Abdulaziz, Abdullah's half-brother, and I'll put up a photograph of him as well. This is a quote from Bloomberg. He put great efforts into stopping his country from falling into the Arab Spring. Indeed he did. I've said it severally, but I think Saudi Arabia is very brittle at this time, and I tweeted this morning, you got the Houthis in Sana'a now. You got Bashar the Sticky still there. You got Baghdadi, well, if he exists, on the Anbar border, and you've got a transition. This will certainly be an interesting moment, and you might be also seeing a major reorientation in US policy towards Iran, all in one episode, which is quite interesting, I think. Interesting piece in the Asia Times, Kim's crime is Putin, not Sony, saying that I speculate that a more immediate explanation for the quick sanctions slapdown was that Kim Jong-un had compounded his diplomatic crime of trying to split and circumvent the six-party talks, United Front, through unilateral outreach by dealing with the monster of the century, actually monster of 3 weeks ago, and I expect soon to resume the crown of Vladimir Putin. The PRC and the US, in fact, have a joint interest using the six-party talks to neutralize independent North Korean diplomacy and keep the initiative out of the hands of the DPRK, and for that matter, South Korea, Japan, and the Russian Federation. The PRC, I think, wants to maintain North Korea as an impotent buffer state under its thumb. And the United States wants to quarantine North Korea as a nettlesome nuclear power, and perhaps an important non-Chinese justification for the enormous US's North Asia military presence. Neither superpower, in other words, places a high priority on seeing North Korean diplomacy beyond the current futility, and I think that's a valid point. I wrote about North Korea in November 2010, a time before Kim Jong-un had come into power, and I was talking about far away and distant lands lies the Hermit Kingdom. This land is ruled by the House of Kim, and its capital is Pyongyang. And I was describing how they all have tiny little hands like the elves and the shoemaker, which was a story I used to read to Hannah that we used to like together. And this country has nuclear weapons, and on its border with its neighbor South Korea sit 25,000 American soldiers. The media, this was written a while back, keeps chanting like a mantra, China will rein North Korea in. It is not in their interest to have a mad dog like North Korea as an ally. And I said, I think this is an embedded narrative fallacy that most Western commentators are apparently popping quaaludes, I wrote. And I think, in that sense, going back to the previous article I was reading about, North Korea is a perfect instrument for China as well as the US. The Houthis aim the sword, writes The Economist, after many debilitating jabs. Yemen's Houthi rebels appear to be moving in for the kill against the staggering government of President Abdullah Mansour Hadi. The mostly Shia militiamen burst out of their northern redoubt in 2011 and advanced progressively into the capital, Sana'a, by cannily exploiting the country's power vacuum, engaging in populist politics and launching a series of well-timed attacks. And I think the Hadi has now resigned, and this goes back to the degree of uncertainty around Saudi Arabia, and Yemen is part of that. I didn't like, but it caught my attention, a damaged trolley bus after it was hit by a shell in Donetsk, Ukraine. This is TASS Media via The Guardian. Bloomberg has a headline, only bullets fly at Ukrainian airport at conflict center. Take you back to August 2014, when I spoke of NATO's whole new characterization of warfare called ambiguous warfare, and how, in my view, eastern Ukraine has become as much a shadow zone as some of the Ebola zones in West Africa. Carl Bildt tweeted a photograph of the Ukrainian President Poroshenko holding up some debris, and I'll put that up. I like this sentence, which I think is true. Israel appears to prefer that the Syrian army, Hezbollah, and Iran remain trapped in an endless struggle against the opposition. Barack Obama will not meet Prime Minister Netanyahu on his US trip. He was invited by Speaker Boehner, and obviously that's an enormous breach of protocol and really quite outrageous on Netanyahu's part. To allow yourself to be inserted into the argument in such a way, I think. The President will not be meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu because of the proximity of the Israeli election. The President is the chief guest in India. Barack Obama will do something in India on Monday that an American president almost never does in public. He'll sit in one place in a foreign country for hours. Obama will be the official chief guest at India's Republic Day parade, the first US president invited to attend. His presence will signal an increasingly close relationship between partners with a sometimes prickly history. As we look forward at the kind of global priorities where we want to make progress the next 2 years, we literally cannot achieve our objectives without cooperation from India, and that's very much, I think, part of the pivot. You collaborate with India in order to put pressure and encircle China. So I think this is a very big foreign policy statement on President Obama's part, actually, and India certainly is rising under Narendra Modi, as I said it would, notwithstanding his other issues. But what's interesting is how Indian GDP is now poised to overtake China within 24 months. So very much the coming story, I think. Eurozone boost. Now, this was the big news yesterday, and I was thinking to myself, it's incredible how I can sit here now, really tap myself into into Bloomberg TV, listen to what Draghi is saying, simultaneously translated, and thinking how slow the internet was 8-9 years ago. It was just not possible to do such a thing, or to trade, because you would be so far out of the loop. And it's such a interesting market. It goes back, as I said to Nisha, that's all about escape velocity, and she said, what do you mean? And I said, Paul Virilio, it's only in the futures market that you can achieve an exponential increase in capital in a very short space of time. No other market really offers that to you. So you may be busy with that and keeping an eye on things, and they certainly are worthy of keeping an eye on. Peter Engano tweeted the key points of the ECB's quantitative easing program, and do have a look at that. I wrote on the 12th of January ahead of this announcement, I called it the year of G2 as Europe off balance. I said Europe printed a negative year-on-year deflation rate of 0.2% in December. And I said the ECB is imminently looking to launch a QE money printing program. I called the euro dollar at parity and below. I'm saying the economic blowback from the frozen conflict in Ukraine with Russia has exacted a price as well. Economics and geopolitics are more intertwined than ever before, and that was something that the WEF said in their report as well. If European bond yields are, and they are at record all-time lows, are the signal in the noise, I said, then this means Europe is in danger of a big death spiral. Italy's 10-year yield fell to 1.46% after this announcement. It touched 1.454%, the lowest level since Bloomberg began collecting the data in 1993. I traded that BTP actually, and it was a real sweet spot once because as they went into the euro, bond yields converged very dramatically, and it was really a one-way trade. Quantified Germany, 10-year yield fell to a record of 0.417%. 2-year touched minus 0.183%, an all-time low. Minus, note. It's incredible. These countries which are so indebted are able to borrow money so cheaply. It's really a sleight of hand, isn't it? As I said, going to parity, I think. I'm going to put up a photograph, and the man in the middle is a fellow called Lorenzo Binsmeggi. And, I attended a conference last year in Milan, 252 days ago, and he was one of the chief guests. And at that point, we were discussing quantitative easing, and he said, look, it's going to happen. The decision has already been made, but look, it took 252 days to implement from that date that he, as far as he was concerned, it was a done deal. And that speaks to the slowness of decision-making at the European Commercial Bank. Currency markets, the euro, well, when I wrote it, it was at 133.36. It's now at 112. Sorry, it was at 113.36. It's at 112.78. Dollar index 94.34. Japanese yen 118.38. And in all that turmoil, it's been the yen that's barely moved. Swiss franc 0.8725. Pound is now 149.76, having lost its perch at 150. Aussie fell below 80 cents for the first time since 2009, 0.7996 when I had a look last. India rupee 61.535. They're getting a big boost from the lower oil price. South Korean 110.83.65. Real 257.42. Egyptian pounds been losing ground. We're just below the 740 level. And the rand firmed up, of course, because of the European stimulus. 11.41.61, but I still think that is going to be prone to a big sell-off at some point. A gauge of the US dollar is set for its highest since 2004, and the prospect of the Fed statement next week, which reiterates that the economy is recovering well and most likely they need to raise rates this year, definitely underpins the dollar. I think they're going to be more aggressive. The market has sort of pushed the first rate rise to the end of the year. I think they'll go mid-year. And the dollar's the biggest gain in the past week among 10 developed Asian peers. Dollar index, I'll put up a 3-month chart. And my prediction has been for 100 for quite a while now. Madame Lagarde was interviewed at Davos, and she too thinks that the Fed will raise interest rates mid-year. Their link for that interview is up. She's always so accomplished. Really, I'm a great admirer. The US economy is the comeback kid of 2015. I said that on the 12th of January. I think the Fed is just one headline economic print from raising interest rates. A rate hike, even as small as a quarter point, will be the catalyst for a renewed surge in the dollar, although we're getting that already. And as I said on the 29th of September, and I wish I'd loaded the boat then, but I said then, the point I'm making is that the dollar has just started getting going. There will be blood in the water. There is a small window if you want to beat the sharks, I said. Put up a photograph of the shark in Dubai Mall, euro dollar 112.76. And it's been in free fall and continues to go down. And I remember on the way up, there were huge gaps when it jumped from parity to about 120 area, and we're just filling those gaps. I think we're going to keep going down here. Crude oil, $46.50, got a bit of a pop because on the news of Saudi king, but really I don't think it makes any difference to policy. Rallied as much as 3.1% in New York and 2.6% in London on that news. But this is a valid point. The passing of King Abdullah is going to increase uncertainty and increase volatility in oil prices in the near term. I'm not so sure with that, fellow Neil Beveridge. I wouldn't expect a change in policy in the near term to be known, but the passing comes at a challenging time for Saudi Arabia. That's what I think is relevant. I do not see a near-term bounce in the oil price. As I've said, I think it could average $50 a barrel for the next 24 months. And, really this is all about President Barack Obama, the oil warfare specialist, who has successfully wrestled the crude price to below $50 a barrel. Gold, we're last trading, we popped over 1,300, and then when I saw it at one point we were at 1,305. But last time I looked we were at 1,296. WHO is saying regarding Ebola that the number of cases is decreasing in all three of the most affected countries, and that's good news indeed. Mogadishu yesterday, a suicide car bomb exploded at the gate of a Mogadishu hotel where Turkish delegates were meeting on Thursday, targeting Erdogan because he's meant to be in town today. In Mogadishu, I mean. I'll put up a photograph of Somali government soldiers, an African Union mission in Somalia, AMISOM, securing the scene of a suicide car explosion in front of the SYL hotel in the capital Mogadishu, January the 22nd, 2015. And apparently Erdogan is going to seek the closure of Gulen-linked schools in Africa. And in Mombasa we had a lovely house in Nyali, and then all of a sudden the Turkish school bought the next door plot and promptly put on the school there, and it became very noisy. And I think that school is called Light Academy, and I'm not sure if these are the Gulen-linked schools he's talking about. Kinshasa authorities restore internet, block mobile phones. I should know, I've been trying to ring up Hervé, it hasn't been very easy. He was very interesting. He was my friend who saved his own life by jumping under the desk in the UN building in Haiti when that earthquake happened. And he says that he can't see how Kabila is going to manage to hang on here. He thinks it's going to just erupt. Wide-scale internet disruption in DR Congo confirmed through Akamai traffic to country. I'll put up that image. And then I came across this image is shot by an observer in Kinshasa, DRC, show policemen shot at crowd with assault rifle. Apparently the Presidential Guard raided a hospital as well, and then shot up people there as well. I think President Kabila is playing with fire and a new post-Ouagadougou normal. And I wrote that piece, Ouagadougou's Signal to Sub-Saharan Africa, and I don't think he's listening there. And the preeminent point about Burkina Faso was that they achieved escape velocity. They did it quick, and the president was gone. That is a serious risk that's facing Kabila, I think. And then I saw from very old pics the Rumble in the Jungle boxing match between Muhammad Ali and George Foreman in Kinshasa in 1974. There's a fabulous documentary by Spike Lee, I think. If you've never seen it, do watch it. It's amazing. No one thought he was going to win that fight, nor did. And at one point, his whole corner's depressed, and he's having to cheer them up. It's just amazing. But this is the photo, the moment of his victory. South African oil share popped positive for the year, plus 0.26%. South Africa's central bank will wait to see the second round effects of the sharp drop in oil prices before making a policy response. They're going to cut rates. Dollar rand 1141.66. Egyptian pound, as I said, softening 740 last. Egyptian stock market, look at this, up 10.93% already so far this year. And in 2014, January, and it's been a stonking rally since then. I said if the equity markets had a vote in Egypt, Army General, now President Fatih al-Sisi, would actually get one of those impossible to believe votes of 99.8%, I said. The Nigerian security advisor is in favor of a poll delay. Well, that's an interesting development. Nigerian all share is down 14.34% year to date. Probably the worst performing stock market in the world, not difficult to know why. I wrote about it on the 10th of November last year when I said, turning to the markets in Africa, the Naira and the all-share index have been waggadoogoed by the collapse in the price of oil, and that still refers. This is Obama, who's an oil warfare specialist, and obviously the aim was at Putin and Venezuela and others, but Nigeria, Angola all got caught up in the crossfire, I'm afraid. Ghana Stock Exchange is minus 2.34% year to date. South Africa's Standard Bank is opening up a rep office in Ethiopia. Manufacturers are very keen on Ethiopia. Africa is open for business, says Bob Diamond. Urbanization is real. Scale of opportunity is real in Africa, he says at the web. NSE ranked the third best performer in Africa last year. It's a 3-year bull market here, up over that 36-month period about 145% in local currency. So you take off about 10-15% for the currency depreciation, which is offset by any dividend income you would have received. So CFC raised 5.08 billion shillings out of the anticipated 4 billion corporate bond. All the banks have been raising money via corporate bonds. Kenya shilling 91.75, as I've said before, it's not a story about the shilling, it's a story about the dollar. Nairobi all share up 1.4% year to date, up 0.24% yesterday. NSE 20 up 1.18% year to date, up 0.25% yesterday. The market has been resilient, it's performing, and I think that's on the basis that there's a big stimulus coming from the oil price. Once again, thank you for stopping by and wishing you a great weekend.